Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. Salvas to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Today, I welcome everyone to His Holiness Candramauli Swami Maharaj's daily call. Today, Guru Maharaj is going to enlighten us on the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 9, Passing Away of Bhishma Deva, verse number 8. Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada. I'll just share my screen. You can please take over the call, Guru Maharaj.
Can you see me okay?
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
Okay, I have a different camera angle, so I'm just checking to see if it's okay.
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
Okay. Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 9th chapter, verse number 8. The passing away of Bhishma Deva, grandfather of Bhishma. Anyache Munio Brahman, Brahmarata Dayo Malahan, Shishya Upeta Jagum, Kishapagira Sadayaha. And many others like Sukadeva Goswami and other purified souls, Kishapa and Angir and others, all accompanied by their relatives, arrived there. Purport. Sukadeva Goswami, Brahmarata, the famous son and disciple of Sri Vyasadeva, who taught him first the Mahabharata and then the Srimad Bhagavatam. Sukadeva Goswami recited 1,400,000 verses of the Mahabharata and the councils of the Gandharvas, Yakshas, and Rakshasas, and he recited Srimad Bhagavatam for the first time in the presence of Maharaj Parikshit. He thoroughly studied all the Vedic literatures from his great father, as he was completely purified soul by dint of his extensive knowledge in the principles of religion. From Mahabharata Sabda Parva 411 is understood that he was also present in the royal assembly of Maharaj Yudhisthira and at the fasting of Maharaj Parikshit. As a bona fide disciple of Srila Vyasadeva, he inquired from his father very extensively about religious principles and spiritual values. And his great father also satisfied him by teaching him the yoga system, by which one can take to the spiritual kingdom, the difference between true work and empirical knowledge, the ways and means of attaining spiritual realization, for ashrams, namely student, householder, retired, and renounced life, the sublime position of the Supreme Person of the Godhead, and the process of seeing him face to face. The bona fide candidate for receiving knowledge, the consideration of the 5 elements, the unique position of intelligence, the consciousness of the material nature and the living entity, the symptoms of the self-realized soul, the working principles of the material body, the symptoms of influential modes of nature, the tree of perpetual desire, and psychic activities. Sometimes he went to the sun planet with the permission of his father and Naradaji. Descriptions of his travel in space were given in Shanti Parva, Mahabharata. At last he attained this transcendental realm. He is known by different names like Maya, Aruni, Sutta, Vaikuntha, and Satmajana. We'll get a little description of Sukadeva Swami. So we'll speak a little bit about Sukadeva Swami. Umagyantimirandasya jana jana salakana. Taksun namitam yena tasmai Shri Guru Namaha. Uma Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna Vishnu. Shri Bhakti Bhakti Vedanta Swami. Namaste and Swati Devi Golden Pacharine. Here we say Sunya Bhavadi Pasyat Yadai. There are many stories in relationship to Sukadeva Goswami's origin. And one of the stories that he is was Srimati Radharani's parrot named Suka. And after Srimati Radharani left, he was quite despondent. So he flew around trying to find out where he could hear transcendental knowledge from great sages. And so he came across a situation which was about to unfold, where Lord Shiva was going to speak Srimad Bhagavatam to his wife Parvati. And she was ready to hear, and he was beginning to speak. Sukadeva Goswami decided to hide and hear also, knowing that Shiva probably wouldn't be happy if he was also there, so he hid. And he was listening. Now, we might say that there is sometimes a tendency for a personality who is listening, sometimes he is sleeping. And so as Shiva was reciting, Parvati was falling asleep. And Shiva, sometimes he would stop and say, "Are you listening? Are you awake?" And at first she responded yes, but after some time she went back into sleep again. But Suka, the parrot, wanted to hear more and more. So every time Shiva would turn to Parvati, without looking at her, he would always say, he was engrossed in speaking Srimad Bhagavatam, he would say, "Are you awake?" Suka, imitating her voice, would give the answer yes. So this went on for some time, and then Shiva looked up and he realized his wife was sleeping. And he understood there was another person there who was responding to his questions, whether she was awake or not. And then he noticed the parrot. And so he became quite unhappy about the situation. And he took out his trishul, his trident, and he threw it at the parrot, Suka. Suka ran to save his life, followed by Shiva's trident. So then he decided, where am I going to hide? At that time he came to the ashram of Vyasadeva, and Vyasadeva was also reciting Srimad Bhagavatam to his wife, and she was also falling asleep. It happens. And so he took the opportunity to enter into her womb so he could hide from the trident of Shiva. So he stayed within the womb of the wife of Vyasadeva for 16 years. Vyasadeva's wife knew she was pregnant, but the child would not appear. So in order to get the child to appear, Vyasadeva started to narrate Srimad Bhagavatam to his wife. Again, continuing. And this time, Sukadeva Goswami, who entered into the womb of his wife, was listening with great attention. And he heard everything and learned everything about Srimad Bhagavatam from Vyasadeva. After 16 years, he appeared from the womb. And as soon as he appeared, And a 16-year-old boy, simply clothed by the four directions, he simply left and started to leave home. His father called after him, my son, come back, come back. But the only response that Vyasadeva heard was from the echo of the trees. And then he went searching after his son, trying to follow him. And Sukadeva Goswami knew he had a mission. He understood that there was a great personality who was a king, and his name was Maharaj Parikshit. And he had taken a vow to fast until death. Sages and saints from all over the universe came to see this great king who was now fasting until death. He had been cursed to be bitten by a snake bird and die after 7 days. For giving up his royal dress and his royal responsibilities, his family, everything, went to sit at the banks of the Yamuna. Some say the Yamuna, some say Ganges. And he sat there to fast to death. And many great personalities came to meet this great king, who was a devotee of the Lord and a great master. And at that time, Sukadeva Goswami appeared. Of course, so when he was walking along the road, he was without any attire, and he passed by a lake with ladies who were bathing there. When they saw this young man, clothed only by the four directions, they didn't feel at all shy because they could see that he was a self-realized soul and did not make a distinction between man and woman. And so they took no precautions when he came by while they were bathing. But when his father, who had followed behind, as soon as he came, they immediately started to cover their bodies. And Prabhupada talks about because Vyasadeva was in household life, he made distinctions between man and woman. And Sukadeva Goswami didn't. He didn't see the body at all. And so, after some time, he arrived at the spot where Parikshit Maharaj was. And as soon as he arrived, he was the youngest of everyone. Everyone stood up in honor of this great saint and welcomed him to sit in the seat of honor and speak transcendental knowledge. And then he took the seat of honor and began speaking to Maharaj Parikshit, who was eager to hear Srimad Bhagavatam from this self-realized soul, Sukadeva Goswami. And as you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll see the intercourse or the discourse between Sukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit. Maharaj Parikshit asking so many questions, and Sukadeva Goswami giving the perfect answers, and also referring to other episodes in history to illustrate the principles of Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's a little bit about the life of Sukadeva Goswami. And the word sukha refers to parrot. If a parrot touches a fruit with its beak, the fruit becomes sweeter simply by the touch of the parrot. So in the same way, when the parrot of transcendental personality, Sukadeva Goswami, speaks to Srimad Bhagavatam, it becomes sweeter and more relishable by anyone who hears, particularly those who are fixed in devotional service. And this is a little bit about the life of Sukadeva Goswami and a little bit of his history. Okay, let's go on to the next personality. This is Kushapa. one of the Prajapatis of the son of Marichi, and one of the son-in-laws of Prajapati Daksha. He is the father of the gigantic bird Garuda, who was given elephants and tortoises as edibles. That is Garuda. He married 13 daughters of Prajapati Daksha, and their names are Aditi, Diti, Danu, Kasta, Arishta, Sarasa, Ilya, Muni, Prodavasa, Tamra, Surabi, Sharama, and Timi. He begat many children, both demigods and demons, by those wives. From his first wife, Aditi, all the 12 Aditis were born. One of them was Vamana, the incarnation of Godhead. This great sage Kashyapa, who was also present at the time of Arjuna's birth, he received a presentation of the whole world from Parasuram, and later on he asked Parasuram to go out of the world. His other name is Aristanemi. He lives on the northern side of the universe. And so here's a short description of Kashyapa. His two prominent wives are mentioned there. They are also sons of Prajapati Daksha. They are Aditi and Diti. Aditi is the mother of the demigods, and Diti is the mother of the demons, or the Danavas. As it's mentioned here, he was the father of both demigods and demons. So demons are a race of people who are also born. They live on different planets throughout the universe. In the Bhagavatam, it describes a whole list of different types of demons. Kalindas, some of the other ones, Kusmandas, Rakshasas, Yakshas, so many different types of demons, just like there are so many different types of demigods. So these demons also take birth, and as when the new manifestation comes, and Kajapati is a Prajapati. That means he has the service of bringing in the new creation by producing children from these souls that are waiting to take birth or waiting to reappear in the next millennium. The story of how Diti approached him at a very inauspicious hour for union, and he told her it was not a good time, my dear lady. Lord Shiva is riding around with his ghosts at this time, and this is a very inauspicious time. But Diti did not listen, and she continued to persist her husband Kashyapa for union, and somehow he agreed, and that was the birth of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, born from the womb of Diti. Diti, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu were killed by the Supreme Lord, but they were commissioned by Indra to do the work. Indra and his demigods prayed to the Lord for the Lord to come. And Diti became angry at Indra, saying that he was the cause of her son's dying. So she performed great austerities to get revenge and to create a particular son that would kill Indra. So Indra knew about the whole program, and she qualified herself and performed this great austerity. It's one of the chapters in the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam. I think it's the last chapter. And Indra, realizing his life was at threat, he entered into the womb of Diti and cut the womb into into seven pieces, and then he cut each of those 7 pieces into another 7 pieces. And what was born was 49 Maruts. And rather than becoming enemies of Indra, they became friends of Indra. And they're one of the demigods. So this is an interesting story. You should read that chapter I believe it's in the 6th canto. Deity tries to take revenge against Indra. The story of Aditi, when the big demigods attacked the heavenly planets, Aditi was worried for her children because she is the mother of many of the demigods. So she performed austerity and penances in order to get protection for her sons. And that was the appearance of Vamanadev. Vamanadev was an incarnation of the Lord who came from Aditi. And she is she's the mother of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who took away the entire universe, away from all the 3 worlds, away from Bali Maharaj, after he had usurped it from Indra. Bali was so powerful that when he came into the heavenly planets, the demigods simply took their possessions, their wives, and immediately fled, knowing there was no chance to fight against Bali. So Bali took over, so the whole universe was under the control of the demons. And then, of course, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears when things become chaotic. And just like today, things are quite chaotic. And sometimes people say, well, where has Krishna appeared now? He's appeared in the form of his holy name. It's the incarnation of the name of Krishna, who is the power to push back the influence of the demoniac rule within society and to reestablish Sanatana Dharma, eternal religious principles. So the Lord is here in the form of his holy name. But sometimes he comes in the form of in the personality of himself. And in this case, it was Vamanadev. So here's a little bit about Kashyapa and his wives. I don't know the story of Parasuram and his relationship with Kashyapa. It's not mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Obviously, it's mentioned somewhere else in the Puranas. So here's a little bit about Kashyapa. How many other personalities are listed in this particular purport? This is only one more. Angirasa. Okay. He is the son of Maharshi Angira, and it is known as Brihaspati, the priest of the demigod. He said that Dronacharya was his partial incarnation. Sukracharya was the spiritual master of the demons, and Brihaspati challenged him. His son was Kacha, and he delivered the fire weapon first to Bharadwaja Muni. He begat 6 sons like the fire god by his wife Chandramauli, one of the reputed stars. He could travel in space as if he could present himself even in the planets of Ramaloka and Indraloka. He advised the king of heaven Indra after conquering the demons. Once he cursed Indra, who had to become a hog on the earth and was unwilling to return to heaven. Such is the power of the attraction of the illusionary energy. Even a hog does not wish to part with his earthly possessions in exchange for a heavenly kingdom. He was the religious preceptor of the natives of different planets. So here is Brihaspati, the priest of the demigods, a little bit about. There's a lot of intrigue in his life when his wife was stolen by, I forgot who it was. Another demigod stole his wife, and that was a big problem. So Prabhupada said, you know, even in the heavenly planets, these things go on. So some people think, well, if I make it to the heavenly planets, everything will be nice, but not necessarily. There's demigods, and a lot of times fighting with the demons in the heavenly planets. There's wars going on there. And there's also, you know, because the men and women are very beautiful, a lot of times they cheat on each other's wives. So it's not exactly heaven. And Prabodhananda Saraswati, in one of his prayers, talks about heaven as a pie in the sky. He calls it Akash Pushpayate. Akash means sky, and Pushpa means flower. Flowers that grow in the sky. Of course, there is no flowers that grow in the sky, so it's simply an illusion. So the happiness and material life in the heavenly planets is another form of material illusion. Okay, and we have the story of how Brihaspati cursed Indra, become a hog on the earth. Prabhupada tells that story how in his hog existence he was living, and then there was nobody to rule the heavenly planets. So Brahma came down to Indra and said, Indra, you know, hey, you know, we need you in the heavenly planets. He said, when Indra said, well, you know, I'm here. I got my hog wife, and I got my hoglets. I'm happy. I got all the stool I need to eat. Got some nice mud. Hey, I'm already in heaven. So Brahma didn't know what to do. And Prabhupada talks about how one can get, no matter how abominable one's situation is, one can get attached to it in spite. It's like sometimes we will ask them to come and join the Hare Krishna movement and you can live in a nice temple, get nice food every day, and you won't have to work. All you have to do is serve the Lord and associate with other devotees, very nice and happy life. And they say, no, I got my wife, I got my kids, I got my car, I got my house, got my vacation plans, my bank balance is getting bigger. I'm going to enjoy. Can't give this up. This is too nice. So it's just like Indra in his hog-like existence. So Brahma didn't know what to do. So then he came up with an idea, and he decided to kill family members of Indra, his wife, and all his piglets, all his little kitties there. And then when that was happening, Indra realized that everything he lived for as a pig was now being, taken away. So finally he agreed to go back to the heavenly planet. So Prabhupada said even a hog does not wish to part with his earthly possessions in exchange for the heavenly kingdom. So here's something about Brihaspati. Of course, the one story when Brihaspati came to visit Indra, when Indra was being worshipped by all of his followers, Indra didn't really acknowledge the presence of his spiritual master, Brihaspati. And when Brihaspati came, Indra continued to accept his worship. Although he saw his spiritual master, he didn't acknowledge his presence, didn't welcome him, nothing. He simply continued. He was enamored by his own worship. Brihaspati noted that, didn't say anything, turned around and left. When that happened, Indra realized he had committed an offense by not. And then right after that, he tried to go and find Brihaspati, but he couldn't find Brihaspati anywhere. He wanted to make amends for his offense. But Brihaspati remained invisible. and Indra could not find him. And right after that is when the demons came out and conquered the demigods and subjugated the heavenly kingdom. Because of the offense of a spiritual master, one loses their power, both material and spiritual power. And then one is subjected to struggle with material nature. Okay, so there's a little bit about Angirasa, also known as Brihaspati. Get a little insight into these great personalities and some of the intrigues that go around in their life.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Guru Maharaj, for explaining about these great sages. So many things to learn from these great people, great personalities. Thank you so much. Dear devotees, if you have any questions or comments or realizations, you can please go ahead and please turn on your cameras. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Dear devotees, any questions? Radha Vinodri Mataji. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and all glories to you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's good. You can ask the question. Guru Maharaj.
Okay. Okay. So I'm not sure. Maybe you spoke about it. I had to leave a little for a short time. But my question is about Shukadev Goswami. That I've heard previously that in the beginning of his life, he was an impersonalist or monist. So if this is true, or how should we understand this, if this was really like that?
Let's see. Yeah, we were all of us were impersonalists before we came. We had no idea of the personality of Godhead. So, after hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from his father, then he became fully fixed in transcendental knowledge of the personality of Godhead. Sometimes someone starts from the impersonal level and becomes a person, becomes personal.
I see. And still, I wonder, of Prahlad Maharaj, we heard that when he listened to transcendental knowledge in the womb of his mother, then it helped him. So he became a devotee. But in case of Shukadev Goswami, he also listened to Srimad Bhagavatam while he was in the womb of his mother. So I just still don't understand what was the difference.
Well, if you hear Srimad Bhagavatam, you can interpret it in different ways. There are people, there are souls that can give you a complete explanation of how Srimad Bhagavatam concludes in the impersonal aspect of the Lord. I've seen it done. I said Bhanu Maharaj did it. Bhanu Maharaj is one of the greatest scholars in our ISKCON society. He's translated many books of the Goswami, but he was explaining and showing verses that illustrate that, the conclusion of Bhagavatam can be delineated as impersonal. It's a matter of, it's a matter of consciousness. But when you understand the actual meaning of the verses, you cannot conclude that. But see, I mean, people who have great knowledge of scripture can twist the scripture to make it mean anything they want it to mean.
Yeah, it's really interesting, but it also shows how important it is which source we hear transcendental knowledge
That's
from.
why you need to hear from the Mahajano Yena Katasapanta. That's the bottom line.
Mhm. Thank you very much. It clarified.
Yeah, the truth of religious principles are hidden in the hearts of the self-realized soul. So, Prabhupada said there was so many editions of Bhagavad Gita before he came. But until he came and presented Bhagavad Gita as it is, most of the editions concluded that, Krishna was, powerful person, not the Supreme Lord, maybe an incarnation of the Supreme Lord at best. So, there's so many editions of, and also Bhagavatam. When you have this, the Bhagavatam, they can't touch so much because, what's his name? Sankaracharya, he showed that Bhagavad Gita ends in personalism. But he was a gentleman, he didn't touch Bhagavatam. Prabhupada said that. Because he's a Vaishnava at heart, he's Lord Shiva. But in order to do his work, he was presenting scripture with his personal conclusion.
Mhm. Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah.
You need that.
I also would like to ask, connected to this, that some time ago I just had this idea that it might be useful in studying the scriptures to learn a little bit of Sanskrit. But now, as you said, I just have this feeling that it may not be such great help than listening to devotees. But at the same time, I'm not sure, because sometimes it really helps to understand the verse more when we check out the word by word translation. But there are so many different words for one thing. So I'm not sure what would you suggest? Could it help or not? Because I suppose it's great effort to learn Sanskrit.
Well, it takes 12 years to learn Sanskrit grammar. But once you learn the grammar, then you can practically create your own scripture.
Sorry, I couldn't hear this.
Yeah, once you learn the grammar, you can
Maharaj, your voice is not that much very clear. It's like a faded voice. It's faint.
So I only got one voice. I don't know what else I can do.
Sorry, Guru Maharaj. I think this is with the new connection.
And maybe speak from another head, but I'm only got one head, so I can't really, change my head around.
Sorry.
Blame it on Mr. Schreiber, not me. He did it. I'm doing my best. Can you hear me now?
Yes, good Maharaj. Yeah, but I think with the new setup, the voice, some sound system has changed. I think it's not like previous. It's like some, yeah.
Okay, this is the first day I got a new computer.
Yeah. Okay.
The first day I'm using it.
Okay.
But the visual should be better in the new computer.
Yes, good Maharaj. Yeah, video is very.
Can you hear me? I mean,
Yes, Guru Maharaj, we can hear you, but the voice is not that much very clear. That's all.
all right, let me hold the microphone. How about that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Devotee, what do you think? Can you hear Guru Maharaj clearly now?
No, Guru Maharaj, it's really, really hard to hear you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. My obeisances to you. It's really difficult to hear you.
Okay.
Maybe
That's-
from.
And then I'll let me know if you can hear my response. But Radha Vinodini, I don't. If you want to go down that route, I wouldn't stop you. I wouldn't think it's a waste of time. But you're going to have to really apply yourself to study. It is very helpful for learning Shastra to know the Sanskrit and the etymological root word. The different presentations of Sanskrit are, you have classical Sanskrit, you have ancient Sanskrit, and then you have more of a modern day version of Sanskrit. I was just with Krishna Kshetra Maharaj, and we did a joint class in Zagreb Temple on Sunday, just 2 days ago. And he spoke a lot about Sanskrit language.
Mhm.
And he made some interesting points. If you can get a hold of that lecture, contact the devotees in Zagreb, maybe Markandeya, contact Markandeya, and he's a brahmachari there, and see if you can get that lecture.
I suppose it was probably broadcasted on YouTube, so I will check out. It's just if you say so that it might be too much effort, which doesn't really worth it, then I suppose it's not that important. It's just it was an idea, but not I'm not that attached to it. Luckily, in Hungary, there is this university and they teach Sanskrit. So there are 2 Matajis who teach Sanskrit. So it would be possible, but it might be more useful to learn in other ways. So
Prabhupada said if you want to learn Sanskrit, learn the verses.
mhm. Yeah,
What's if you want, you can read, when you read the verse, read the verse and then read very carefully the transliteration.
mhm. Yeah, my idea came actually when on one occasion we were discussing humility with devotees, and I was just curious and searched the verses which Sanskrit expressions are used for humility, and there were so many of them, and I'm sure there is a difference between these, and I just realized how detailed, how much more detailed Sanskrit is for this kind of things than our languages. And that's when I was thinking that maybe it would be useful to know the difference, but I don't know.
Depends what you're going to use it for. You want to use it for something? You want to write a book or?
Not really. I was thinking that maybe it would help to understand the verse better, what the verse says,
Well,
but that's why I was asking that if it's better to just listen to classes about the verse, and maybe in that way is more helpful.
The best thing is when you hear listen to those who you feel you can learn from, and then ask the questions and relate it. You can also ask questions based on the text itself.
Mhm.
See in the 12th canto, in the 11th canto, you'll see a lot of the words that are mentioned in the Sanskrit are given reference as the essential principle of the verse. In other words, a particular statement or a series of words, or maybe even one word, will be the emphasis of the meaning of that verse.
Mhm.
Acharya. So I think if you want to go deeper into that, just get the commentation by the acharyas, because they part of that.
Okay. Okay.
You know those texts that one, I forgot what it's called, there's a series of, it's on the entire 10th canto of Bhagavatam, and what it is.
Yeah,
each
I
verse-
saw it sometimes. Yeah,
each
I don't
verse-
remember the title, but I know that book. Yeah.
It's not one book, it's a series of volumes.
Mhm.
Each is commented by the acharyas using a lot of the Sanskrit reference to emphasize the different points. And you can also get Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. And
Mhm.
then go verse by verse and see what he says in relationship to the verse.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
that would save you the trouble of doing the same thing and learning Sanskrit.
Mhm. Yeah, it's really helpful. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be the best. So I guess you do that. Get the Srimad Bhagavatam commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and then go through it chapter by chapter.
Okay. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Are you going to do it, or you just kind of like?
No, I first I have to get these books because I don't have them. But I suppose I just read Srimad Bhagavatam now. I'm at the 11th canto, and after finishing this, I suppose I will just start reading reading all these together, and this way starting this study.
Where are you in the 11th canto?
It's sorry, I don't know the number of chapter now, but in sometime in the middle. It's I read it in Kindle, and it says it's around 50%.
But which chapter?
Sorry, I don't remember that. I'm not.
Remember what chapter you're reading? Come on, that's not possible.
Okay, now it's embarrassing. I know it's.
You must not be reading for a long time. You must have been letting it go.
No, I don't read each day, and sometimes I switch what I read. So it's not that I read every day this 11th canto. So that's why it is. But yeah, okay, it's a good lesson to be more.
The 11th canto commentaries are full of the statements given by the acharyas.
Mhm.
The devotees who did the 11th canto simply referred a lot to the commentaries by the acharyas, such as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Jiva Swami, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and of course, Srila Prabhupada also.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so when you read the 11th canto purports, many of them are full of the commentaries by the acharyas, who do emphasize the statements of the verse by pointing out the essential Sanskrit terminology that gives the main meaning of the verse.
Mhm.
So here's a shortcut way to learn the same thing.
Mhm.
If you're going to read, you should read every day.
Yeah, I know I should. Okay. Thank you so much for your guidance. Hare Krishna.
You can always ask for guidance.
Sorry.
We're happy to give guidance.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Yeah. Namrata Mataji, you want to go ahead and ask question? Thank you so much, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to your lotus feet, Guru Maharaj. Guru Maharaj, I wanted to ask that in the lower species, the animals and all, they don't, the karma doesn't apply to them. Then how do they progress?
Automatically. So like evolutionary scale, they go from one species to another. It's already organized by material nature. These are the lowest, and after the aquatics, one goes to the, and then, no, to the trees, I'm sorry, to the trees, the plants, and then the insects, the creepers, and then to the birds, and then to the humans. But generally, one has to traverse many of the different types of living species. So, therefore, it says that if you kill the lower species, it interferes with the natural evolution from one body to the next to take birth in that same type of body and finish out the term of existence in that body before they can to the next stage. But it's automatic by the arrangements of the Lord through the material. But there's another spirit that now mentioned in the Bhagavatam, incarnates in all species of life. 400,000 species of life. Krishna comes as the best cockroach amongst all the cockroaches. The other cockroaches that are around, that time they gather around this main cockroach because they're attracted to him. And because of that, they actually go through the evolutionary cycle fast. So Krishna to push the living entities faster towards the human form of life, which is the only, which is the form of life that practice spiritual life. So it's automatic.
Okay. I couldn't hear all of it, Guru Maharaj, but some part of it I could hear. So it is an automatic process by material energy. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Raj Prabhu, you want to go ahead?
Thank you. Hi, Krishna Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to you, Maharaj. Maharaj, you were talking about reading from the Bhagavatam, and you gave some nice examples. Can you offer any advice or techniques on how we can maximize the amount that we can absorb, understand, and realize in reading the Bhagavatam?
Yeah, it's called thoughtful reading. And read with the idea to understand. Take notes. When you feel there's something outstanding that you want to teach in notation, or you have questions, reread what you read. To read it once and read it over and over. To read it more, you get more meaning. You read it in a repetition. But I would give you some really practical suggestions. There is a book that has just been released by His Holiness Krishna Maharaj. It's called, let me get the book. I got it right here. 1 minute. You see it? Can you see that?
Yes,
Oh,
Guru Maharaj.
Paravitya Mala. And the last part of the book, there's 4 chapters all about Srimad Bhagavatam, and one of the sections in that exactly answers your question, how to get the most out of Bhagavatam. By Krishna Shekhar Maharaj, it's been released 2 months ago. The UK is good. UK gets books quite fast, and I'm sure you can find it.
Thank you, Maharaj.
But read in a thoughtful way. Write down your questions as you read. Write down your realizations. And another thing is speak what you read to others. That brings about greater retention of the knowledge.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Scarlett Mataji, you want to go ahead?
Hare Krishna, please accept my obeisances and all glories to Prabhupada, all glories to you, and all glories to all of you. I have 2 questions. One of them is, the first one is, as I read and I understand it the way, because you just talk about the Brihaspati, although then I think about Brihaspati, Mangala, Shukracharya, all of them are the planets, who has control in everything in the material world, including us. Have I understand it wrong?
Yeah, but demigods can squash you any minute if they want to.
But then what I understand that because they control everything in our life, in the material, I mean, it make it very, very difficult to, for instance, to control the senses, not to eat too much, not to eat, you know what I mean? Not to drink bad things, and so on and so on. It's because it has been decided by them. They are agents.
No.
No.
It's been decided by Krishna. Demigods are just carrying out his plan for organization. That's it.
Exactly, decided by Krishna, but these are the agent who works for Krishna, doesn't it, right? Is it not right?
They work 100% under Krishna. They're not
Yes.
doing They're not doing anything different.
No, exactly.
So the material world has a certain set of law and orders of how it works. You go to any state, you go to any institution, it has a set of rules and regulations by which it operates. So this material world is the same thing. It's governed by the three modes of material energy, and it works accordingly. So if you plug yourself into the mode of ignorance, then you suffer. If you plug yourself into the mode of passion, you struggle really hard. And if you plug yourself in the mode of goodness, you get some material satisfaction. So you have your independence. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
But you
And-
still, because you decided to come to the material world, you are somewhat affected by the laws of material nature. But if you become Krishna conscious, and here's the difference, then you free yourself from the influence of the material energy. So you're not subjected to these laws unless you want to enjoy this material world. As long as you want to enjoy, you still have to become controlled by the material energy. When you stop trying to enjoy and you start engaging in devotional service, then you go underneath the spiritual energy. And then the spiritual energy frees you from the effects of the material energy. That's Krishna, right? Krishna's direct energy.
But there are people, let us say there is a village somewhere in Iran, there is a village, the people doesn't know anything other than what the Muslims religion teach them, and they do their best and so on. In Muslim, it's okay to eat meat, it's okay to kill the animal and eat them and so on. But this village, they don't have any possibility to know anything about Krishna, about what Krishna wanted us to do, and so on. And they do everything under the control of the material world. What about them? What happened to them then?
Karma doesn't explain that. Prahlad Maharaj says one takes birth according to their karma in their next life. So wherever you were born, whatever situation you're in, it's an accumulation of your karma. So yeah, some people are born in a very good material situation, and some are born in a very horrible material situation. It's all due to their previous karma. So you can change your karma once you can, if they somehow or other become fortunate and meet a spiritual master. The Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to deliver Sanatana Dharma, eternal religious principles to the whole world. And he showed that it's not relegated or simply limited to India or the Indian culture. It's for everyone. So this Krishna conscious movement is going everywhere. We try to spread Krishna consciousness to people who are, what you might say, of course, everyone who's not Krishna conscious is unfortunate. So, yeah, so if they become fortunate and meet a devotee or somehow hear about chanting the holy name, then they can change their life.
My second question is, I
Well,
have,
I'm not sure you got the first question. Just don't keep firing questions unless you understand the answers to the previous question. You didn't give me any answer, any response. Do you understand or don't understand?
yes, I understand it, but the situation is, I am very, very grateful that I have got meet you and to be be your learn from you. But at the same time, I want to try to send the book, the Bhagavad Gita, and Perfect Question, Perfect Answer, which I believe they are very perfect combination. But the problem is, it's very, very, very dangerous for them if they see it in government there, if they see what they have got, which it is under control. The post is under control, their telephones are under control. Anyway, it is very dangerous for them to get this book. So I am in dilemma to send and to put them in danger or not to send. That there I am conflicted. I don't know what to do with it.
You just speak to them, maybe instead of sending things to them.
You mean in the telephone, to talk to them in the telephone, you know?
Or send a message, send an email. There's so many ways to communicate.
So
You can also say something to them where they can learn something about where they can get more information from. You don't have to give them their information directly. You can tell them where they can get the information.
that is what I'm trying to learn, where it is, if there is any temple or Krishna devotees in Iran. I'm trying to learn about it. I'm trying to search about it to see if there is, so that I can tell them to go there and ask them and get help from them.
There's a group there.
Mm.
I've given classes over the telephone to devotees in Iran many times,
Mm-hmm.
but not recently.
No, okay.
Iran was one of the first countries by which we started preaching Krishna consciousness. Back in the night when Prabhupada was here, we had the Shah of Iran, his daughter was actually following Krishna consciousness. And we had Swami Bhattacharya. He was teaching yoga to the daughter of the Shah of Iran.
Mm.
So the tendency was there.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, there are devotees. I'd have to find out. I don't really know how to make contact with them right now, but I could find out.
Please, if there is possibility, tell me what to do. I will do it.
So let me do a little canvassing around. I was just talking to someone a few months ago saying, you know, they're preaching through the media in Iran.
My next question is, I have heard Prabhupada's lecture, many lecture, and in those lecture, he always encouraged people who are there. They are not all devotees when they sit and listen. They are Christian from some other religion, and he encouraged them to practice their own religion. But then yesterday, or might be the day before yesterday, I come across Chaitanya Charitamrita. In this, it's Madhya Lila, chapter 9, verse 362. There it says, nothing else. Leave anybody, all others. Just this is the right. This is the right one. How come?
Oh, the thing is, you don't understand what is being said.
What?
You don't understand.
I understand this is the right. I understand that. And I take it to my heart. I believe that. But
Yeah,
how
but
come?
You don't understand. And if you're willing to listen, I'll tell you.
Okay.
What Prabhupada is saying is be God conscious. Whether it's Krishna conscious or consciousness of God in any of the traditions, be God conscious. And that's the same thing that Chaitanya Charitamrita is saying. Just be God conscious, Krishna conscious, or Allah conscious, or Christ conscious. In other words, be God conscious. In other words, develop your love for God. If you have love for God, it doesn't matter what tradition you're following, you have achieved perfection. Love for God means to serve God. Love for God means to associate with others who are serving God also. So take the principle of God consciousness rather than get into the sectarian thing that one particular path is better than the other path. There are people who follow other paths that are better devotees than we are. Our path, we have one thing at an advantage, we have more knowledge available. But devotion sits in the heart of all living entities. One can be a lover of God in the Christian tradition. One can be a lover of God in the Jewish tradition. One can be a lover of God in Islamic tradition. If they follow the tradition perfectly, exactly. But you find in many of the other traditions that a lot of the pure teachings of that tradition have been subjected to adulteration due to political and social influences. And therefore, it's hard to find that teaching within these other traditions that is pure, although it does exist. So in essence, God consciousness is available in different faith paths. We don't call them religions, we call them paths of faith. But what is being taught here in Krishna consciousness, it hasn't been adulterated. Although there's been many attempts to adulterate our movement. Prabhupada could foresee that, and he really set it up in a way that made it hard for them to do that. But they've tried, people have tried, even within our own movement. There are devotees that are trying to move our movement away from the pure essence and mix it in with material things. It's happening right now. So each of the traditions in their inception have pure teachings. Christ taught purely, Mohammedan taught purely, but they all taught at a different time to a different class of people. Muhammad taught to people who were outside the Varnashram system. The desert people who were living in the desert. So people who were, well, here's the example. People were very much involved with incest during that time. And therefore, one of the main teachings of Muhammad was don't sleep with your mother or your sister. That was going on. And therefore, in order to raise people up away from these sinful activities, he taught a very simplified form of God consciousness. And you can find that out in the Bhavishya Purana. Mohammed's name is mentioned in the Bhavishya Purana. Christ's name is mentioned in the Bhavishya Purana. Both teaching religious principles at a certain level according to the people they were talking to. But Krishna was talking to Arjuna, who was a highly developed devotee and very intelligent. So he gave much more knowledge. God gave much more knowledge to Arjuna, and then later he took that same knowledge and he gave even more to Uddhava in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the gradations of knowledge are different within the traditions. But one thing is clear, that if devotion is there, then that is the foundation for understanding success. If one has love for God in the Christian tradition, then that's perfect. If they have love for God in the Islamic tradition, then they have reached perfection. So it's love for God that is the deciding factor.
Does this answer, Mataji? You have any further questions?
Bhakti. Bhakti? Yeah, I'm right at the end of my lecture. I'll call you back in about a few minutes. All right, well. Okay. This is something you have to study in detail. You just can't just say, well, this is better than this, and then Prabhupada said this, and this said this. It doesn't give you any clear answer or understanding of this situation. You have to understand it in the principle of the goal of all bona fide religious systems is to love God. And one who has reached that stage has reached perfection. But you might say these other traditions have been somewhat bastardized, adulterized, and somewhat, what we say, what's the word? Detoured away from their principles, but it still does exist. There are many pure Christians, there are many pure Islamic followers, there are many pure people who follow the Jewish tradition. So you have to go by the results. And there are many Hare Krishnas who don't follow Prabhupada and claim that they're following the best tradition. If you don't follow the teachings, then how can you actually become a lover of God? So in the Sri Sampradaya, they follow Ramanuja. In the Madhva Sampradaya, the Tattvavadis, they follow Madhvacharya. We are meant to follow, Lord Brahma, who comes and who's the head of our disciplic succession, who comes all the way down to his divine Guru Srila Prabhupada. If you study the early Christian teachings, much emphasis was on the glorification of the name of the Lord. That has been somewhat marginalized, sidelined, and now it's not so much. But there are many pure Christians who understand, what is real God consciousness. So you have to look at the individual And not say, well, this tradition is better than that tradition, and this tradition is better than that. What's better or worse is who has love of God and who doesn't have love of God. Any other questions?
Guru Maharaj, if you have time, we have one more question by Asha Mataji. She messaged me her question.
Go ahead.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. She is asking, Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances at your holy feet. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj, when we acquire the spiritual knowledge by His grace, is it necessary to remember each verse or to understand and contemplate, surrender and remain in bhakti in the spiritual journey? Because I can't remember the verse by heart, but it remains close to the heart.
You can become fully God conscious and love of God just by chanting Hare Krishna. But the knowledge is supportive and helpful, and for most of us, necessary. But I think in your case, if you just keep writing love letters to Krishna and chant his holy name, and don't think about opening up your material life, you are in a good position. The gopis, how much did the gopis know about philosophy? All they know is that Krishna was the best. They couldn't stop thinking about Krishna. When, who was it? I think it was, I can't remember who was Kura or Candramauli or somebody was speaking to the gopis. They didn't want to hear all this philosophy. They just want to know how Krishna was doing. So, yeah, first I encourage devotees to read and study the books because I think that's important and necessary. But Prabhupada does qualify that by saying, even if you don't have so much knowledge, if you can still develop love for Krishna just by hearing about Krishna. And especially chanting his holy name.
And Guru Maharaj, she has a second part of it, another part of the question, like those who are born in a spiritual family with pious life, will they have an easier path in spiritual journey than the ones who had impious life in this life with no spiritual family surroundings?
Not necessarily. Kiratuhunam palinda pupasa ambera sambhav yavana kashadaya Ganecha papa upasraya sraya Siddhanti Prabhavishnave Namaha. This verse names the different races in the world that are below the Varnashram system. Even they can become perfect if they follow in the footsteps of a pure devotee of the Lord. But you might say those who are pious, they have done something in previous lives to get them to that position where they can more easily and naturally understand spiritual practice and spiritual principles. There's advantages, but then again, ultimately, just like it says, if you're born in a Brahmin family, doesn't mean you're a Brahmin, but you're in a good position to become a Brahmin because you're surrounded by Brahminical culture. And if you're born in a Sudra family, but you have knowledge Brahminical knowledge, then you're actually Brahman. The birth or material situation may be an advantage and may not be an advantage. It depends on the process, when you take up the process properly. So, all right, let's end here. It's we're 35 minutes over time, and I have to
Yes, good.
to do in the meantime. Okay, so we'll continue tomorrow with verse number 9, is it?
Yes, good Maharaj. Yeah.
Is it also a series of personalities that I believe it is. More personalities in
Yeah, it was in the previous verses, good Maharaj. 6 to 7 was all the personalities mentioned, and it was a continuation today.
And tomorrow too?
Tomorrow, I don't think so, good Maharaj. 1 second, I'll check. No, good Maharaj. Tomorrow, we don't have the personalities mentioned in the verse.
Tomorrow, Wednesday, and also on Thursday. Friday. Let's see, where am I Friday? It should be good for Friday. Saturday, I won't be. So I'll be here from here now to Friday.
So Saturday, you're not available, good Maharaj?
Saturday, we're celebrating Radhastami in Soho Street in London. That's
Yes.
an old program. If I can break away, and if the schedule allows me to, I will. I kind of think it's going to be pretty hard for me to do that, because I won't even be near my computer.
Is it broadcasted online, Guru Maharaj?
I don't really know. Check with the information sources and see.
Yes, good.
I'll be giving class in the Bhaktivedanta Manor on Sunday morning.
Okay.
And that will be broadcast. The Manor does broadcast.
Yes, good. Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj.
That's a little early for you guys in America.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Yeah.
You get up at, let's see, 5 hours difference, class starts at 7:30. So if you're up at 2:30 in the morning, you can hear the class directly.
I'll try, Guru Maharaj.
That's the US guys. For the Indian people, they're in good position. Europe's in good position.
Yes, good.
Okay, thank you very much, my obeisances.
Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj, for your time and association. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Guru
Jai.
Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.
Thank you.
I think you can listen to Guru Maharaj's class later on my